Hey everybody, it's Tyler Austin. Thank you so much for watching. In this video, I'm going to go over the different muzzle velocities that you can expect out of different length barrels in your AK for both 7.62x39 and 5.45x39. There's a lot of information, especially with the popularity of pistols and SBRs nowadays. There's a plethora of information out there on the muzzle velocities that you can expect and the resulting external and terminal ballistic performance of the 5.56 cartridge when you start lopping down the barrel of your AR. There's a plethora of information out there on that. However, not so much information on the AK for both 7.62x39 and especially 5.45x39. So that's what this video is for. So let's dive right on into it. We're going to start with 7.62x39 first. So out of your standard 16-inch barrel, so your standard configuration AK has a 16-inch barrel. Technically, it's a little bit over 16 inches. I believe it's 16.3 to be exact. The whole centimeters to inch conversion thing can be weird. So it's slightly over 16 inches. I'm just going to call it 16 inches for the sake of simplicity. Using just standard 123 or 124 grain military ball ammunition of a 16-inch barrel, you should expect a muzzle velocity of around 2,300 feet per second. Might go up a little bit higher, like 2,350, 2,375, depending on the specific ammo you're using and the specific rifle and barrel and all of that. But you should expect a muzzle velocity of around 2,300 feet per second, again with standard military ball ammunition. So what happens when we start chopping down the barrel? Well, if we go from a 16-inch barrel to a 12.5-inch barrel, which is the barrel length of your AK-104 carbine, which unfortunately is not terribly popular here in the United States, but it's very popular in other countries such as Russia. Of a 12.5-inch barrel, you will be looking at around 2,200 feet per second. So you only lose about 100 feet per second muzzle velocity when you chop about 4 inches off that barrel. It's pretty good. If we chop it down further to 10.5 inches, which is a very popular length for AK pistols here in the United States, like this AKP from Pomona State Armory. This is a 10.5-inch barrel. Again, 10.5 inches is a pretty popular barrel length for AK pistols here in the United States. Of a 10.5-inch barrel, you should expect around 2,100 feet per second. So lopping down the barrel by almost by 6 inches, you only lose about 200 feet per second. Again, it's really good. 7.62x39 retains a lot of muzzle velocity even out of shorter barrels. And this isn't necessarily particular to 7.62x39. Larger caliber intermediate cartridges such as 7.62x39 or 300 Blackout, etc. tend to perform better out of shorter barreled rifles. There's obviously a lot of factors that go into that, powder, specific powders used and all that. But one of the bigger factors that is a simple math equation. The larger the diameter of the bullet, the larger the bore has to be. The larger the bore just allows more powder to be burned per length of barrel as compared to a smaller caliber bullet such as like 5.56 or 5.45, something like the 22 caliber projectiles. So that's one of the major contributing factors to that. So that's why 7.62x39, like 300 Blackout and so forth, tend to do really well at maintaining muzzle velocity out of shorter barrels. So looking at these numbers here, I'm going to make kind of a controversial statement here, but I think a 16-inch barrel for a 7.62x39 AK is unnecessary. It's too long. Now, if you're looking for an AK that you really want to push 7.62x39 to its limits, obviously you're going to want a longer barrel to eke out as much muzzle velocity as you can. But for a general purpose rifle, I think 16 inches is too long. I think the kind of the Goldilocks zone for 7.62 is like 12.5 to 10.5, somewhere in that range. If you want a little bit more muzzle velocity, I would highly recommend going 12.5. Or if you want something just a little bit more compact, I would recommend going 11.5 or 10.5. If you go with an 11.5, you're going to be looking at around 2,150 feet per second muzzle velocity. So if you're looking for a 7.62 AK, I would recommend somewhere between 12.5 and 10.5 inch barrel for that AK. All right, so now let's move on to 5.45 by 39. Now, I'm going to be using 7 and 6 as my example here. I understand that that's not terribly common here in the United States after the Obama administration's ban on it. However, it is kind of a military standard, military loading, so that's what I'm going to use. If you buy commercially available military loadings for 5.45, you should expect around these same numbers. So again, I'm going to be using 7 and 6 as my example. Out of a 16-inch barrel, which again is standard for your AK-74, you should expect around 2,900 feet per second. If we lop down the barrel to 12.5 inches, which is your standard barrel length for an AK-105 carbine, which is very popular in Russia, especially within Russian Special Forces. Unfortunately, not so popular here in the United States. Hopefully that will change. You should expect around 2,800 feet per second muzzle velocity, which is really great for a 22 caliber projectile that only loses 100 feet per second, even though you chop the barrel down by almost 4 inches. Typically 22 caliber projectiles such as 5.56, 223, etc. tend to lose a lot of muzzle velocity once you start lopping down the barrel length. However, 5.45 actually tends to retain a lot of muzzle velocity. I don't know why exactly that is. I'm going to assume it probably has to do with the specific powder used and all of that. But regardless, it actually performs really well. Now, out of an 8-inch barrel, which is standard for your AKS-74U, technically it's a little bit over 8 inches. I think it's like 8.2 or 8.3. I'm just going to say 8 inches for the sake of simplicity. You're going to be looking around 2,400 feet per second. So you definitely lose quite a bit of velocity, around 500 feet per second. But still, you've lopped the barrel down by literally in half, and you're still maintaining quite a bit of muzzle velocity, even with that significantly shortened barrel, which is, again, pretty impressive for a 22 caliber military service cartridge. Now, I know some of you are going to be asking, well, that was kind of a big jump between 12.5 to 8 inch. What about 10.5 or 11.5? Honestly, there's not a lot of information out there in terms of muzzle velocity and barrel length for 5.45. It's hard enough to find muzzle velocities under for barrel lengths under 16 inches. So even finding this information is kind of hard. And there's just not a lot of 10.5 inch or 11.5 inch AK 5.45 AKs out there. So as a result, there's just not a lot of information out there on the muzzle velocities that you can expect. So I don't want to give you any wrong information out there. So I'm just going to kind of go with the information that I have available to me. So with that being said, if you're looking, I think the now optimal, of course, is going to be very dependent on your specific context and usage and all that. However, I think probably the best general purpose barrel length for a 5.45 AK is 12.5 inches, because again, you kind of maintain a fairly short, compact rifle, while at the same time maintaining a very large portion of your muzzle velocity. So if you're looking for an AK 5.45 AK, they're going to be very hard to find, but I would highly recommend a 12.5 inch barrel. 16 inch barrel obviously is just fine too. It's just longer and you just don't gain a whole lot of muzzle velocity. However, if you can afford it, because if you're going to go with 12.5, it's probably going to have to be like a custom build from like Rifle Dynamics or somebody else. Unfortunately, to my knowledge, there isn't any manufacturer making, I guess you could say, mass-produced 12.5 inch barrels, AK-105 kind of variants. Hopefully, companies like Kalashnikov USA and Palmetto State Armory and those guys will change that. If you're listening, Kalashnikov USA, you should take this in consideration. I would definitely go with 12.5 inches for your 5.45 AK. I think that's probably going to be the best general purpose length, barrel length for your 5.45 AK. I hope you found this video helpful and informative. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Please like, subscribe, follow, depending on where you're watching this. I'm Tyler Austin. Thank you so much for watching.